The mop slipped from his hand as laughter echoed through the vast marble lobby. A group of employees stood around the grand piano, polished like a jewel but never touched, and one of them, with a mocking grin, shouted across the room that the janitor should play something for them. Their words weren't an invitation. They were a cruel joke meant to entertain themselves at his expense. For a second, he froze, the weight of exhaustion heavy on his shoulders, his uniform still damp from cleaning. But then, with a quiet determination that none of them could understand, he set the mop aside and walked slowly toward the piano. The room chuckled, expecting a spectacle, but what came instead was something no one would forget. His fingers pressed against the keys with the gentleness of a prayer, and from the silence bloomed music so pure, so full of sorrow and love, that even the hardened CEO in the corner felt his eyes sting with tears. Before we go deeper, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the hidden greatness that often lies within ordinary people, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echo Tales. Your support helps us bring you more stories that reveal the beauty and resilience of the human spirit. The janitor's name was Michael, and behind his weary eyes was a man who had lived through storms most would never imagine. Years earlier, his life had been filled with music and dreams. He had been a pianist, not famous, but good enough to play at local recitals and teach at community centers. He believed music was his future, until tragedy shattered his world. His wife, the love of his youth, fell ill suddenly, and their savings vanished into medical bills. Despite every effort, she slipped away, leaving Michael with their young son, Daniel, and a mountain of grief he could barely carry. Overnight, music became a luxury he could not afford. Survival became the priority, and so he took whatever work he could find, first in warehouses, then driving delivery trucks, and eventually as a janitor. Life as a single father was a daily battle. He woke before dawn to make breakfast, walked his son to school, and spent his days mopping floors, scrubbing bathrooms, and picking up after people who barely acknowledged his existence. At night, he came home exhausted, but still found the strength to help Daniel with homework, to cook dinner, and to tuck him into bed with a story. The old keyboard he kept in their small apartment was his secret refuge. Sometimes, after his son had drifted off to sleep, Michael would sit down and play. The notes were soft and broken, but they were pieces of his heart that reminded him he was still alive. He dreamed of one day giving his son a better life, but most days, it felt impossible. At work, Michael was invisible. People passed him in the hallways as though he were part of the furniture. He learned to accept it, to keep his head down and focus on what mattered most, his boy. That's why, when the employees mocked him that day in the lobby, it cut deeply. It wasn't the first time he'd been the target of cruel humor, but something about the laughter, the way they dismissed his humanity, struck a chord inside him that refused to be silenced. So when he sat at the piano, it wasn't just a performance. It was his soul demanding to be heard. The music that poured from the piano was unlike anything the employees had expected. It was a story told without words, a confession of love and loss, of struggles endured and sacrifices made. Each chord carried the weight of his late wife's memory, each melody the fierce devotion he held for his son. The notes rose like whispers of hope and fell like the tears he had shed in silence. For years, the air in the lobby shifted, heavy with emotion as the music wrapped around everyone present. The mocking smiles vanished, replaced by stillness and awe. Even the CEO, a man known for his iron resolve and focus on profits above all else, felt himself transported back to his own childhood, reminded of the sacrifices his parents had made for him. For the first time in years, he felt something break through the walls he had built around his heart. When Michael's hands finally lifted from the keys, the room remained silent, the last notes lingering like an echo of his life. Then, slowly, applause began, not forced but real, deep and unrestrained. People who had laughed at him moments earlier now stood clapping, their eyes wet with tears. And in the corner the CEO rose to his feet, applauding with the same sincerity as everyone else. Michael looked around, overwhelmed, unsure of how to process the shift. He hadn't played for recognition or sympathy. He had played because he needed to, because music was the only truth he had left. That moment changed everything. The CEO later approached him privately, wanting to know his story. For the first time in years, Michael spoke openly about his past, about his wife, his son, and the music he thought he had lost forever. Touched beyond measure, the CEO offered him an opportunity he never imagined, a chance to perform at the company's annual gala. It was an event attended by leaders, partners, and the press, a stage far grander than anything Michael had dreamed of. He hesitated, afraid, but his son's proud smile gave him the courage to accept. On the night of the gala, Michael sat at a grand piano under the glow of soft lights, the room filled with hundreds of eyes waiting for him to play. His hands trembled, but when he looked into the audience and saw his son, beaming with pride, the fear melted away. He began to play, and once again, the music flowed like water, carrying the story of his life. It was not polished perfection, but it was real, raw, and breathtakingly human. By the end, the audience was on its feet, some wiping away tears, others cheering loudly. The performance went beyond music. It was a reminder of the hidden brilliance that exists in people the world overlooks every day. News of the Janitor pianist spread quickly. His story touched hearts beyond the walls of the company, and soon opportunities arrived. He was offered chances to teach, to perform, to once again make music a part of his life. Most importantly, his son was given scholarships and support that ensured a brighter future. What began as cruel mockery turned into a triumph that lifted both father and son onto a path filled with hope. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echo Tales. Your engagement helps us continue bringing stories that remind us of resilience, love, and the strength of the human spirit. And before we end, here's a special request. Tell us in the comments if you believe hidden talents can change lives. Your words might inspire someone out there to never give up on their gift, no matter how deeply it's been buried.